All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going over different iterations of JavaScript miles per gallon program. And I've been trying to do this in accordance with our textbook, JavaScript 6th edition by Sasha Vodnik and Don Gosselin. So far, I went through a single example where we created a simple program where everything was inside of a main or driver function and there was no error handling. Then we took that same program and we broke it up into a series of functions or modules, but still we had no error handling in it. All right, next we went in and we started with control flow. So first we added an if statement or a couple if statements so to make sure that both our miles driven and our gallons used were valid values, that the miles driven had to be between 1 and 1,000, which again were arbitrary values that I selected, and that the gallons used were between 1 and 50. All right. From there, we went on and did another control flow program where we put this whole thing in a loop so that the user was able to run our program again and again and again as many times as she or he would wish. So now we're going to go back and we're going to add arrays into the mix. So again, last time we left off, we added if statements, then we added a loop, and now we want to add an array. And let's change that to arrays will be added to the program. All right. So again, you have seen this already. Okay, those are our constants. I'm going to add another constant in here. And I want to run this program 5 times. So I'm going to call it const. And let's call it what it is. We'll call it num runs. And we'll set that equal to 5. And we're just going to say here arbitrary number of program runs. And when I say arbitrary, I just mean we could change that to 3. We could change that to 100 if we wanted to. All right. And now I'm going to change these 3 so that instead of being variables, regular scalar variables that only hold a single value, they're now going to hold arrays. And there's other ways I can do it, but that's probably the easiest way. So this will be a miles driven array, which will hold the miles drivens. This will be the gallons used array, which holds the gallons used. And this will be the MPG array. All right. So right now, it doesn't really look very different, except for the fact that what I've done in here is I have made all of these arrays. Now, I'm going to run this 5 times. So since I'm not going to run it a variable number of times, I don't need any of these anymore. I don't need my again variable. I don't need my response variable. I don't need my first char variable. So I could use a while loop here, but I'm not going to. I'm going to use a for loop. Why? For loops are really made to work with arrays. Plus, why use one when I don't have to? For var LCV equals 0, LCV less than the program runs, plus LCV. All right. So there were my, it's num runs. So let's change that to num runs. Okay. So now I want to do this 5 times. So the first time, I can get rid of all these words var now. I don't need any of these anymore. In fact, I should double check this. I'm trying to be consistent here. So let me go back to my previous program, the one with the for loop rather. Those should have been var, 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 etc. This should not be var. We've already created that. Okay, again, I'm just trying to be consistent here and give you the right code. All right, so I want each miles driven. Okay, so this will be miles driven LCV. So the first time through, it'll be the first miles driven, the first gallons used. Oops, that's got to be an L. And the first miles per gallon. All right. Now I've got my choice here. I can either display my stuff every single time, or I can display all of it when I get done. And I like that better. So I'm going to get rid of this. And I no longer need any of this stuff, this first char and all that good stuff that we had in there before. All right. When I go out of my loop, when I'm totally done in my loop, then I'm going to call another loop. Again, I don't have to do it this way. This is just the way I decided to do it. Now, what typically confuses people when you start working with arrays and working with things like this is, what the heck is that bracket LCV? Well, if you look at it this way, it is the current program run. So the first time through, it's my 0th run. The second time through, it's run 1, then run 2, then run 3, then run 4. Remember, since we're computer people, that means that we're counting starting by 0. So this will be the first run, first time through. Then the next time through, we'll increment it to 1, so that'll be the second run. Then the third, then the fourth, then the fifth run. Then we're printing them out in the same way. And let's see now. Yeah, that's going to be the prompt. It's not really going to look any different. Except now, when we run it, we're going to do 5 inputs before we get any outputs. Then I'll come back and I'll get rid of the 4 and move it in here so it'll look exactly the same as it did before. All right, so here's our first one. Let's put in 420. So now notice again, we're being asked to do it again. 310, 205, 100, or I guess 103. Finally, let's put in something invalid. See if it's getting reset. Put in something valid again and see if it's getting reset. All right, so there's the first one we did. The second one we did. The third one we did. The fourth one we did. And the fifth one we did. So what we ended up doing was we did all of our inputs first, and then we did all of our outputs at one time. Did we have to do it like that? Of course not. All right. Did it work better because we did that? Not really. Did it work worse because we did that? Not really. I'm just trying to show you, all right, I'm just trying to show you some different ways that this stuff could at least conceivably be done. That's all. Let's see. Trying to look in here. Input. Okay. All right. So what I want to do now is I want to show you the same program, but now I want to take this for loop out. So in fact, I'll tell you what, I'll comment all of this stuff out. Whoops. You have to put your comment signs the right way. And I'm just going to grab these 2 lines here, and I'm going to put them back up into the first for loop. Now I'll have to uncomment this one. All right, so let's see how, if at all, it looks different. We'll leave it 210. Oh, I'm surprised. Did I save? Well, I want to make sure that I save this when I got done. And it looks like I did. Array, array, array. So there's 510. Oh, it's still asking me for all of them. We can run our way through this. We'll do this in the next chapter. 210. Bad input. Bad input. 1050. 1001, which should be out of range. And 51, which should be out of range. And we're getting, there's the first one, second one, third one, fourth one, and fifth one. Now I'm surprised. I'm not going to lie to you here, that this ran the way it did. It figured out all of them, and I would have thought it would have displayed all of them, but it's not displaying them until it's done. We'll have to go through and run through this in just a minute. Like I said, we can try to do that in the next chapter. So let's talk about what's changed in here. Well, we've got our number of runs, so we added another constant. We made each one of our variables, our two input variables and our output variables, were made into arrays. And that's all we have to do. We could have also said equal new array, like this. That would have worked fine also. I don't see the need to do that when you can do it like this. All right. Now, LCV is our loop control variable. We're telling it to start at 0, so that'll be 0 the first time we go through there. We're telling it to end, or do it as long as that is less than 5. All right, so go up through 4, which will do it 5 times. Every time through, adding 1 to our loop control variable. All right, so the first time through, that'll be the first, this will be 0 miles driven. All right, the second time through, or the first time, that'll be 0, and that'll be 0. Ah, I see something here. That should have been LCV here. So it did work, but I don't know if it really worked the right way. Okay. So let's see if that changed anything. $205. No, 306. 410. 520. 630. Huh. As you can see, ooh, there's the problem. I'm running an old copy. Here we go. All right, now let's try running it. All right, 210, and it broke. Okay, good. Then we can just figure out why it broke. Console. Display info LCV is not a function. So script line 82. Ah. Display info, but we have to pass it in 3 variables. There it is. Okay, let's try that. As you can see, that's what all this is a work in progress. There's our answer. That's the way it should be running. Okay. All right. So, the problem in here was I was running an old version of it that was called script0.js. So no matter what changes I was making, it was running them against another file. So taking it one more time from the top, we added numRuns, a constant, meaning we'll run the program 5 times. We made miles driven, gallons used, and MPG all arrays. Then we said do this 5 times. Figure out the current miles driven, figure out the current gallons used, so allow you to input the current miles driven, allow you to input the current gallons used, grab that miles driven for the current one, divide it by the gallons used for the current one, and put it in the current MPG. Then call display info. This is not an array. That's the name of a routine. That's why I was getting that error. All right. And pass in all of these. Now, just to be complete here, let's take that, and now let's uncomment, and I'm going to put this back to the way it was before. All right? Just to show you that what I'm going to do now, if this works, is I'm going to input 5 times. And it looks like it doesn't like something here. Oh, because the one that I uncommented was still incorrect. All right. So let's run it 5 times. We'll put in bad inputs the first time. See, it's still changing it. All right. Second time, we'll put in different inputs. Third time. Now we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the only difference between these 2 iterations is, do we want to be able to input all 5 values, figure out all 5 MPGs, then print them all out at once? Or do we want to do everything inside of the same loop, where, as you saw, every time we ran it, we got our answer. So that's iteration 0, iteration 1, iteration 2, iteration 3, iteration 4, iteration 5. Okay? So what I attempted to show you in this particular example, remember, we've gone through 3 iterations now. In the first iteration, we added 2 if statements to demonstrate elementary exception handling. Then we added a while loop so that the program could be repeated again and again. And in the third one, all right, we added arrays. Okay, so that's where we are. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this last example, because it's the latest and greatest, copy it to the clipboard. And in fact, I already have some code in here, I guess, for Chapter 4. And what I've done, I'm going to break this down into just one lecture. But first, in the first one here, the if statements, all I did was I added some syntax errors purposely. So there are errors in there are errors in the language that I put in. I took out a semicolon, I spelled something wrong, and we're going to keep running through these one at a time using the console until we get that fixed. Then in the next one, I tried to put in a couple runtime errors. You'll see what they are at that when we get to that point. And then for the last one, I put in some logic errors. All right, so I'll come back with that. Again, I'm going to probably combine that into one presentation. I don't think it'll be that long. So I'll do that next.